The world was stunned when SpaceX caught a rocket using Mechazilla's robotic arms, a feat so groundbreaking it even made China take notice. But replicating pioneering technology has never been easy, especially when China's previous attempts to copy and paste have often ended in spectacular failure. Mechazilla has become a new symbol of the aerospace revolution. The question now is, can China truly replicate SpaceX's rocket-catching system? Let's dive deep with Space Now into the truth behind China's ambition to reverse-engineer American innovation. The story begins on October 13th when SpaceX successfully launched Flight 5, a major milestone in the history of rocket reusability. The highlight Super Heavy booster N-112 landed safely and was snatched mid-air by Mechazilla's mechanical arms mounted on the launch tower, a move straight out of a sci-fi action movie. But this time, it was real. This wasn't just any catch, it was a declaration that the era of ultra-fast, cost-effective rocket reuse and sending humans to the Moon, or even Mars, is no longer a distant dream. China didn't sit still, but instead of innovating, they held up a mirror to SpaceX. Back in July, leaked images from Cosmoleap, a young Chinese aerospace startup, revealed a rocket-catching tower almost identical to Mechazilla. Elon Musk himself couldn't resist a jab, posting, "Look familiar," a sarcastic but telling dig. Initially, China was cautious. Even SpaceX hadn't fully proven the system at operational scale. But SpaceX's success in Flight 5 completely changed the game, starting to sound like a game of leapfrog in the tech race. Just weeks after SpaceX's historic moment, Cosmoleap announced it had raised over $14 million to fund its rocket reuse program, dubbed UA-Chan. The funding round was led by a coalition of domestic investors, including Shenzhen Chenyutanang Capital Boan Fund, Xiangfang Changqing, and industry heavyweight Zhang Chao. Despite being founded just this March, Cosmoleap has already declared its mission to develop low-cost, reliable, reusable launch systems, something only SpaceX has managed to achieve so far. From an expert perspective, this marks a clear sign that China is ramping up efforts to institutionalize its private space sector, mirroring what the US began doing in the early 2010s. Is China trying to build a domestic version of SpaceX? The specs might be similar, but the mindset behind the tech is not so easily copied. So between SpaceX and Cosmoleap, who's really shaping the future, let's unpack the story with Space Now. Cosmoleap claims to have already achieved several technical breakthroughs, including finalizing a prototype rocket-catching tower, developing a flight control computer named Firestone 1, building China's first dedicated tower controller called Little Firestone. The new round of funding will continue to support testing of the rocket-catching tower and further development of the UA-Chan rocket. Recently, the company also released a promotional video showcasing the system, in which their launch tower and mechanical arms appear strikingly similar to SpaceX's modular steel structure. They've even publicly shared plans to install the launch platform on an offshore oil rig. Do you see this resemblance as a serious attempt to learn, or just blatant unlicensed copying? Cosmoleap plans to carry out its first test flight of UA-Chan in either 2025 or 2026. The announcement was confirmed at the International Astronautical Congress in October 2024. From the video, the similarities to Starship are hard to ignore: a modular steel launch tower, chopstick arms just like Mechazilla's, and a UA-Chan rocket measuring 246 feet tall and 13 feet in diameter, slightly larger than the Falcon 9. On the technical side, UA-Chan features grid fins for atmospheric control, an octagonal engine configuration with 9 engines and methane fuel, all trademarks of SpaceX's design. The payload capacity is also telling: 23,000 pounds to a 620-mile orbit in expendable mode. at 850 pounds in reusable mode, a near-carbon copy of the Falcon 9. So what do you think? If one day Mechazilla ends up with a twin labeled Made in China, would that concern you? SpaceX is redefining how the world reaches space with cutting-edge technology, while China is diving into a high-stakes race to replicate it. But the question remains, can they match SpaceX's precision? Let's break it down in this in-depth analysis from Space Now. Don't miss the next episode where we'll examine the major technical risks China faces in its copy-paste attempt at Mechazilla, and why SpaceX remains a towering force that's not easily overtaken. Got questions about Mechazilla or the global race toward rocket reusability? Drop them in the comments. Our analysis team is ready to dive in with you. Unlike the Falcon 9, which lands on deployable legs, Cosmo Leap is taking a bold new approach, letting the rocket fall straight into the catching tower with no landing legs at all. Looking ahead, they're also planning a larger version set to debut by 2030, standing 413 feet tall and capable of lifting up to 220,000 pounds to orbit in expendable mode, 79,000 pounds in reusable mode, a truly ambitious leap. But here's the big question. Do they have the technical foundation to support that ambition? A design may look the same, but the core technology is something that simply can't be copied. SpaceX's strength doesn't just come from the rocket's shape or the structure of the launch tower. It's rooted in decades of flight control, algorithm development, advanced materials, engineering, and an end-to-end supply chain built entirely in-house. Elon Musk didn't build SpaceX to sell tech. He built it as a self-contained empire that's incredibly hard to replicate. At the current pace, if Cosmo Leap doesn't catch up in terms of core technologies, they'll quickly fall behind. Investors won't hesitate to walk away if they don't see tangible signs of success. Do you think Cosmo Leap is just a passing trend, or do they actually have a shot at becoming the SpaceX of the East? Let's zoom out for a moment. The history of China's private space industry is riddled with stories of copy SpaceX, then fail. It's not just Cosmo Leap. Companies like Land Space, Galactic Energy, Space, Pioneer, Deep Blue Aerospace, and CAS Space have all been, essentially, retaking Elon Musk's engineering playbook. But imitation alone doesn't guarantee success. Among them, only Land Space has seen anything close to a win. Their Zhuke 2 rocket became the first methane-fueled launch vehicle to successfully reach orbit, a notable achievement, yes, but still just a flicker of light amid the ongoing setbacks faced by other companies. So here's a question. Is methane fuel truly the game-changer behind the reusability revolution? Take Deep Blue Aerospace, for instance, a company that once pinned big hopes on its Nebula 1 rocket. In a recent test this past September, the rocket lifted off successfully, but during landing its engine failed, causing it to slam into the ground and sustain serious damage to its tail section. The goal of creating a reusable rocket like SpaceX's was suddenly cast into major doubt. Now the company has pivoted to developing a suborbital crew capsule, bearing a strong resemblance to SpaceX's Dragon or Blue Origin's New Shepard. But the question is this a smart strategic move or just a desperate pivot after a failure? What's your take? Space Pioneer hasn't fared much better. During a static fire test of their Tianlong 3 rocket disaster struck, the rocket unexpectedly lifted off without command, then crashed about a mile away and exploded violently. Although there were no injuries, the consequences were serious. The entire program was halted, and the rocket, widely considered to be China's Falcon 9 equivalent, was harshly criticized for blindly copying without deep understanding. With a height of 233 feet, diameter of 12.5 feet, thrust of 1.7 million pounds, 9 engines, LOX-2 kerosene propellant landing legs, and grid fins, everything about it screamed Falcon 9. but the outcome nowhere close. If you were the lead engineer on this project, what would you prioritize, fixing first mechanical design automation systems or the entire testing protocol? In July, iSpace's Hyperbola-1 rocket suffered a catastrophic failure just seconds after liftoff, losing control at approximately Mach 2.5, around 1,900 mph, and an altitude of under 50,000 feet, well before even exiting the lower atmosphere. The primary cause was traced to a malfunction in the rocket's thrust vector control system, which caused it to veer off course dramatically within the first few seconds of flight. The contrast is staggering when compared to SpaceX's more than 200 successful Falcon 9 launches, where thrust vectoring has been refined to stabilize rockets even under extreme wind shear and vibrations at hypersonic speeds. Hyperbola-1 simply couldn't match that level of precision, resulting in the loss of a payload worth tens of millions of dollars, all due to a single yet critical guidance error. This underscores a key reality. While iSpace and many Chinese startups have closely mimicked the appearance of SpaceX's technology, from grid fins to folding landing legs and reusable systems replicating the external design, is no substitute for mastering the core technologies. That's why failures continue to repeat themselves despite heavy investment and a growing sense of urgency in China's private space sector. Still, China doesn't appear to be backing down from its ambition to build a homegrown SpaceX equivalent. In fact, it's ramping up. Cosmoleap is currently developing an offshore rocket-catching tower, while CAS Space has been pursuing global aspirations with its Kinetica rocket line since 2022. Their approach feels like trying to swim upstream to catch up with SpaceX's past. And yet, even with accelerated momentum, the technological gap remains wide. In aerospace, there are no shortcuts. Would you like to see a truly successful Chinese SpaceX emerge someday? Or do you believe SpaceX will hold its global dominance indefinitely? Share your thoughts below. One of China's brightest hopes, Kinetica 1, has already completed several successful launches. Now, KS Space is preparing to unveil Kinetica 2 in September next year, aiming for 5 to 8 launches annually. If all goes well, each mission could deliver up to 26,500 pounds to low Earth orbit LEO and 17,200 pounds to Sun-synchronous orbit SSO, impressive specs for a new generation rocket. Just imagine a Chinese private company consistently sending cargo to orbit. Do you think that would shift the geopolitical dynamics of space? CAS Space's ambitions go beyond just cargo. The company plans to reuse the Kinetica system for resupply missions to the Tonggong space station. In parallel, they're also targeting suborbital launch capabilities by 2027. Project manager Li Weipeng has emphasized their broader vision to build a globally competitive launch market right on Chinese soil. But despite the ambition, here's the real question. Will international clients trust CAS Space enough to move their contracts away from SpaceX? KS Space claims to have secured potential agreements with several foreign partners, and they hope upcoming launches will carry satellites from multiple countries. KS Space claims to have secured preliminary agreements with several international partners, and they hope upcoming launches will carry satellites from multiple countries. However, turning that vision into reality won't be easy, because SpaceX dominates the global launch market. With hundreds of successful missions and near-flawless reliability, Falcon 9, Falcon Heavy, and soon Starship have earned the trust not only of NASA, but also of space agencies and private companies across Europe, Japan, South Korea, and beyond. Have you ever heard of any country or major client switching from SpaceX to another provider? Try naming one. CAS Space's challenge isn't just about technology, it's also about capital and time. Developing reusable systems, building launch infrastructure, and training technical teams all demand massive resources. Meanwhile, SpaceX is racing toward the future, and with every successful launch, the rest of the world is forced to accelerate just to keep up. Starship is now the foundation of SpaceX's ambition to land humans on the Moon, and eventually Mars, a dream that's quickly becoming reality. Each move by SpaceX forces other companies to rethink their strategies, compress development timelines, and push the limits of innovation. China has responded with names like Cosmoleap Kinetica and CAS Space, all entering a race in which the home team already has a decade-long head start. Even if imitation can be seen as a form of flattery, it also exposes the glaring gap in core capabilities, innovation culture, and the surrounding technology ecosystem. So, when do you think a company outside of SpaceX will become a truly formidable rival, or will Elon Musk continue to reign for another decade? For now, SpaceX still sets the gold standard in launch reliability and frequency. From ISS resupply missions and Starlink satellite deployments to preparations for lunar and Martian landings, SpaceX operates at a pace and scale no one else has matched. That's why, if you're passionate about space technology and eager to witness the future of humanity beyond Earth, stay tuned to SpaceX's journey, because it might just be them who take us beyond the atmosphere for good. And that's a wrap for today's update. From Cosmoleap to Starship space has never been an easy game, but that's exactly what makes it so captivating. Want to keep exploring the light and shadow sides of aerospace innovation? Subscribe to Space Now, turn on notifications, and join us for the journeys ahead.